A curious arrival. Ambassador Xyloth of the Galactic Concordance stepped through the airlock and onto Babylon Station with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. He had waited years for this appointment to the human station, a chance to learn about the galaxy's most perplexing species. As the pressurized doors hissed shut behind him, Xyloth couldn't help but marvel at the sheer scale of the structure. The entry atrium soared at least 100 meters high, crisscrossed by walkways and dotted with alien vegetation samples. Overhead, a holographic display showed the ceaseless traffic of ships flitting to and fro from the many docking bays. But what struck Xyloth immediately were the weapons. Mere steps away, a pair of hulking armored figures clutched massive rifles, their eyes hidden behind opaque black visors. Around the periphery, more armed guards stood at rigid attention beside security scanners and checkpoints. Even the dock workers loading crates onto hover trolleys had sidearms strapped to their hips. Xyloth swallowed hard, one green hand unconsciously touching the smooth skin where his own species had long ago evolved away their natural defensive claws. He fervently hoped the human propensity for going armed wouldn't extend to their diplomacy. Ambassador Xyloth, I presume. A confident female voice interrupted his thoughts. Welcome to Babylon Station. Xyloth turned to see a statuesque human woman gliding toward him across the polished metal floor. She wore a sleek black uniform adorned with colorful insignia and campaign ribbons that Xyloth could only guess at. Her auburn hair was cropped close in a severe military style, but her eyes sparkled with warmth and intelligence. Ambassador Evelyn Riker, Xyloth said, breaking into his most ingratiating smile. The Galactic Concordance's most perceptive mind, matched with humanity's most strategically accomplished. I anticipate our talks will be quite fruitful. Riker accepted his outstretched hand in a firm grip, her fingers calloused in a way that spoke of long hours gripping weapons as well as pens. On behalf of the Systems Alliance and all of Earth, welcome. I look forward to giving you an inside look at the human way of life as we discuss the future of human concordance relations. Xyloth fell into step alongside the human ambassador as she led him into the station proper, but his eyes kept tracking to the armed soldiers standing guard seemingly everywhere. Your security is quite formidable, he said delicately. Riker just smiled cryptically as they walked beneath the barrel of an enormous autogun that tracked their path. You ain't seen nothing yet. Guns everywhere. As Ambassador Riker led Xyloth through the winding corridors of Babylon Station, the Concordance diplomat couldn't help but marvel at the sheer variety of humanity on display. They passed humans of every size, shape, and color, speaking dozens of languages, and dressed in everything from crisp uniforms to eye-watering casual wear. But no matter their outward differences, Xyloth noticed one common thread. Nearly every human was armed. From the bored-looking teenager slouching against a bulkhead to the silver-haired matriarch bickering with a food vendor, they all carried some form of weapon. Here, a wicked-looking curved blade. There, a sleek laser pistol. Riker noticed him staring. Unsure it must look strange from the outside. But weapons are just a fact of life for us, tools to be respected, like any other. She gestured to a nondescript door. Here, let me show you something that might help explain. The door opened onto a shooting range, where a boisterous group of humans were laughing and jostling each other as they took turns firing at holographic targets. They wore an eye-bending array of clashing patterns and colors, but the camaraderie between them was obvious. Those are Marines, aren't they? Xyloth asked, recognizing the insignia on their sleeves. I didn't realize your elite warriors engaged in such recreational pursuits. Riker chuckled. Oh, they're not elite. Or rather, they're no more elite than any other human. Marksmanship is a skill we all learn from a young age. Watch. As Xyloth looked closer, he realized with a start that some of the figures were mere children, no more than 7 or 8 cycles old. But they handled their weapons with the ease of long familiarity, giggling as they sent tight clusters of shots into the targets. One girl, her hair in stubby pigtails, turned and spotted Riker. Her face lit up. "Aunt Evie, did you see? I got a bullseye." Riker scooped up the girl in a hug. "A Teggerl, Susie, you'll make sniper school yet." She turned back to Zoloff, still carrying the child. "My niece, starting a bit late, honestly, but she's always been more interested in book learning. Diplomacy may suit her too, in time." Zoloff found himself at a loss for words. The idea of children handling deadly weapons as playthings was so far outside his frame of reference as to be incomprehensible. Riker must have sensed his unease. She set the girl down, whispering something that sent her scampering back to the firing line. "Guns aren't just military tools for us," she explained. "They're part of our cultural identity. The history of human civilization is a history of weapons, for good and for ill." She gestured for Zoloff to follow her back out of the range. "Come on, let me show you the histories. Maybe it will help you understand how we got to be this way." As the thick glass doors sealed shut behind them, Zoloff couldn't escape the feeling that he was about to delve into something far more profound and far more unsettling than a mere diplomatic visit. Secrets of human strength. Ambassador Riker led Zoloff into a dimly lit room dominated by an enormous holographic display. With a few deft keystrokes, she called up a swirling collage of images that resolved into a roughly chronological slideshow of human history. "We were killing each other right from the start," she said matter-of-factly, as scenes of primitive warfare flashed across the screen. "Rocks, clubs, spears, weapons have defined our development as a species from our earliest days." Zoloff watched in fascinated horror as the images progressed through increasingly sophisticated means of destruction. Swords, bows, cannons, guns, bombs, missiles, lasers. Humans killing humans, in numbers that defied comprehension. "But we also turned our weapons outwards," Riker continued. A new set of images showed humans in space, suits and ships bristling with armaments. "When we first ventured to the stars, we discovered we weren't alone, and not all our neighbors were friendly." The display shifted to scenes of war against hideous alien forms, insectoid, reptilian, bent-and-tickled horrors that Zoloff recognized from Concordance threat assessments. In each scenario, humans were outnumbered, outmatched. Yet somehow, impossibly, they held the line. Our mastery of weapons allowed us to punch far above our weight as a species, Riker explained. Time and again, we found ourselves facing existential threats. And time and again, our skill at violence saw us through. She paused the playback on a scene of humans standing triumphant atop a mound of chitinous alien corpses, tattered flag fluttering in an alien breeze. "We don't love war, but we're damn good at it. It's why we're still here, and so many other species are not." Zoloff shook his head slowly, trying to process the implications. "Your people have faced trials mine can scarcely imagine," he said. "I begin to understand why you see weapons as so central to your identity." Riker nodded, her eyes distant. "Every human has a story like this," she said softly. "Here's mine." The display changed again, this time to helmet cam footage of a group of human soldiers in a dense green jungle. Zoloff recognized a younger Riker, face streaked with sweat and grime. Suddenly, an explosion blossomed in the center of the formation. Soldiers flew like ragdolls as a horde of shadowy figures emerged from the undergrowth, firing indiscriminately. Riker's voice remained cool over the screams and cries echoing through the room. "Pirate ambush on SCIFi. We were escort for a diplomatic mission, much like this one. They hit us with EMP mines, fried our comms and most of our weapons, but they made one crucial mistake." On screen, the younger Riker rolled to her feet amidst the chaos, snatching up a fallen pirate's sidearm. With ruthless efficiency, she began putting down pirates with precise headshots, rallying the surviving humans to her side. "They assumed taking our tech would leave us helpless," Riker said as her digital ghost mowed down a seemingly endless stream of enemies. "They didn't count on our training, our instinct for battle, the human spirit, you might say." The recording ended with Riker, battered and bloody but unbowed, standing alone amidst a sea of fallen foes. She turned to face the camera, and Xyloth felt a chill at the hardened resolve in those eyes. "We all have a story like this," Riker repeated, vanishing the display with a wave. "Every human. Because being human means being a survivor, whether we like it or not." She fixed Xyloth with a complicated look, equal parts pride and sadness. "Do you understand us better now, Ambassador?" Xyloth met her gaze, mind awhirl with the implications of all he had seen. "I believe I am beginning to, Ambassador Riker. Humanity is unlike any species we have encountered before. Your strength is undeniable, but I suspect it comes with a heavy price." Riker opened her mouth to reply but was cut off by a shrill alarm that echoed through the room like a banshee's cry. A mechanical voice boomed from unseen speakers. "Alert! Babylon Station is under attack. This is not a drill. All personnel report to battle stations. Repeat, Babylon Station is under attack." Looming tensions. Xyloth flinched as another explosion rocked Babylon Station, the deck shuddering beneath his feet. Emergency lights painted the corridor in lurid shades of red and orange as a steady stream of grim-faced humans rushed past, weapons at the ready. "This way, Ambassador," Riker called over the din of blaring alarms. "We need to get you to a secure location." She half-led, half-dragged him through a dizzying series of passages until they emerged into what appeared to be a command center. Uniformed humans hunched over control panels flickering with dire sensor readings, while a cluster of officers gathered around a central holographic display. "What's our status?" Riker demanded, striding up to the group. A grizzled man with admiral's bars turned to face her, his expression grim. "It's the Crithal, Ambassador. A full assault fleet, at least 30 capital ships plus fighter screens. They've already crippled our outer defenses." Riker cursed under her breath. "The Crithal? But we had a peace accord. Why would they break it now?" The Admiral's eyes cut to Xyloth, then back to Riker. Perhaps our guest could shed some light on that. Xyloth shifted uncomfortably as every human eye turned to him. "The Concordance has no more insight into Crithal motivations than you do," he said carefully. "We've had little contact with them since they withdrew from galactic affairs a generation ago." Riker frowned but nodded. "The why of it will have to wait. Right now, we have a station to defend. Admiral, what are our options?" As the humans launched into a rapid-fire tactical discussion, Xyloth found himself pushed to the sidelines, forgotten. He watched the holographic display with growing unease as squadron after squadron of human ships were wiped away by the implacable advance of the Crithal fleet. Humanity was putting up a fierce fight, but even to Xyloth's untrained eye, the outcome seemed inevitable. Babylon Station was outmatched, plain and simple. It would fall, and untold human lives would fall with it. The thought filled Xyloth with an emotion he was surprised to identify as grief. In the short time he'd spent among them, he'd developed a nascent fondness for these strange, violent, resilient creatures. The idea of them being snuffed out by the uncaring claws of the Crithal filled him with an unfamiliar rage. Almost without realizing it, he found himself stepping forward. "Ambassadors, if I may." The humans turned to him surprised. Riker raised an eyebrow. "You have something to contribute, Ambassador Xyloth." Xyloth took a deep breath. "The Concordance has ships nearby. Not many, and not as strong as yours. But we have other advantages: stealth technology, EMPs, viral weaponry. Things you don't." He saw realization dawn on Riker's face, followed quickly by a furrowed brow. "That's generous, Ambassador, but those weapons are banned by every convention of civilized warfare." Xyloth spread his hands. "These are uncivilized times, Ambassador, and the Crithal have already shown their disregard for such conventions." Riker chewed her lip, clearly torn. The Admiral leaned in, murmuring something Xyloth couldn't catch. Finally, she turned back to him, a look of iron resolve on her face. The Concordance fleet would be a welcome addition to the battle. she said. "Coordinate with Admiral Janeway to integrate your ships into our command structure." "And Ambassador?" Her gaze softened fractionally. "Thank you. We won't forget this." Xyloth inclined his head. "Thank me if we survive, Ambassador Riker." The humans allowed themselves a grim chuckle. Then it was back to the deadly serious business of trying to snatch survival from the jaws of defeat. But even as he bent over a console to relay commands to the Concordant ships, Xyloth couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. There was something odd about this Krythal attack, beyond just its seeming unprovoked aggression. Some critical piece of the puzzle he was missing. He only hoped they would live long enough for him to figure out what it was. Trial by fire. The command center shook violently as another salvo of Krythal missiles slammed into Babylon Station's armored hull. Xyloth grabbed the edge of a console to steady himself, his knuckles pale green against the cold metal. On the primary display screen, a squadron of human fighters spun desperately, trying to evade the relentless onslaught of alien warships. One by one, they winked out of existence, swatted from the sky like errant gnats. Concordant stealth ships in position. Admiral Janeway barked out, "Initiating EMP strike." Now, for a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then a series of brilliant blue-white flashes lit up the screen as electromagnetic pulses slammed into the Krythal fleet. Alien ships reeled drunkenly. Their systems scrambled. Some plowed into each other in spectacular displays of pyrotechnics. A ragged cheer went up from the human defenders. "It's working," someone shouted. "We've got them on the ropes." But Xyloth couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Krythal were supposed to have advanced EFF countermeasures. This all felt too easy. As if summoned by his thoughts, a new wave of alien ships dropped out of warp right on top of the station. They opened fire immediately, sending gouts of plasma scorching into the heart of the human defenses. "Incoming!" Admiral Janeway roared. "All hands, brace for impact." The deck heaved and bucked like a storm-tossed ship. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks and shrapnel, sending humans reeling. The lights flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the command center into darkness. In the sudden, awful stillness that followed, Xyloth could hear the distant screams of the wounded and dying. A cold dread settled into his gut. They were losing. A hand grabbed his arm roughly. "Ambassador, we need to evacuate." Riker's voice hissed in his ear. "The Krythal have breached the station. They'll be hunting for high-value targets." Xyloth's mind raced even as Riker pulled him bodily from the command center, down a debris-strewn corridor lit only by emergency lighting. Something about this attack still wasn't sitting right with him. Why would the Krythal break the peace accord now? He panted as they ran. What could they hope to gain? He could practically hear Riker's frown in the darkness. Intel suggested they were after our latest propulsion tech. But you're right, this feels like more than a raid. A chilling thought occurred to Xyloth. "Ambassador, what if the target wasn't your technology? What if it was me?" Riker skidded to a halt, whirling to face him. "Explain," she snapped. Xyloth spread his hands, the pieces falling into place with horrifying clarity. The Concordance has been brokering peace treaties across the galaxy, binding former enemies together in webs of mutual support and defense, including many of the Krythal's historic foes. He saw realization dawn in Riker's eyes. They see the Concordance as a threat, and you, as the architect of that threat. Xyloth finished grimly. This attack was never about humanity. It was about getting to me, disrupting the peace process. Riker's jaw clenched. "And we played right into their hands by bringing you here." A series of nearby explosions rocked the corridor, underscoring the direness of their situation. Riker grabbed Xyloth's arm again, propelling him forward. "We can worry about the whys later," she growled. "Right now, we need to get you to a ship and off this station." But even as they ran, Xyloth's mind churned with the implications of his realization. If the Concordance's diplomatic efforts were seen as enough of a threat to provoke this kind of aggression, then no ambassador was safe. The whole delicate balance of galactic power could unravel, propelling them all into a new age of war and strife, unless they could find a way to stop it. Swords into plowshares. Xyloth crouched behind an overturned table in Babylon Station's once grand atrium, clutching a borrowed human sidearm in shaking hands. Beside him, Ambassador Riker and a handful of survivors fired grimly at the advancing Krythal forces. The alien invaders chittered and hissed as they scuttled forward on too many legs, their exoskeletons shrugging off the humans' increasingly desperate gunfire. One warrior reared up, energy cannon glowing an eerie blue as it prepared to fire, only to explode in a shower of ichor as a pinpoint shot took it through a faceted eye. Xyloth followed the shot's trajectory to see a familiar pigtailed figure perched high in the rafters, cradling the sniper rifle. "You get him, Susie," Riker crowed, pumping a fist in the air. The girl flashed a gap-toothed grin and lined up another shot. All around the atrium, similar scenes played out as the beleaguered human defenders rallied. Marines in powered armor waded into the fray, plasma blades flashing. A grizzled man in engineer's coveralls lobbed a jury-rigged grenade that sent Krythal scattering. A matronly woman in a torn medtech uniform calmly picked off alien after alien with a hand cannon nearly as big as she was. And in the center of it all, Xyloth found himself firing alongside them, his initial trepidation forgotten in the heat of battle. These were his people now, for better or worse. Soldiers and civilians, young and old, they were all bound together by an unbreakable spirit, an indomitable will to survive and thrive no matter the odds. It was, he realized with a start, the same spirit that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place, the same spirit that had seen them through countless trials and tribulations, the same spirit that even now, bloody but unbroken, led them to stand defiant against the Krythal onslaught. And in that moment, Xyloth understood what he had to do. He rose from cover, ignoring Riker's startled cry, and strode out into the open, arms spread wide. The Krythal, startled by this sudden appearance, held their fire for a moment. "I am Ambassador Xyloth of the Galactic Concordance," he called out, his voice ringing through the sudden stillness. "I know what you want. I know why you're really here." The Krythal leader, a towering monstrosity in ornate battle armor, stepped forward, its mandibles clicking menacingly. "Surrender, mammal," it hissed. "Your schemes end here." Xyloth shook his head. "No. Our schemes, as you call them, are just beginning. The Concordance will not stop until every sentient species in the galaxy is united in bonds of friendship and cooperation, including the Krythal." The alien leader reared back, foreclaws snapping in agitation. "Impossible. Krythal do not cooperate. Krythal do not befriend. Krythal conquer." "The old Krythal, perhaps," Xyloth agreed. "But you can be so much more. Join us. Put aside this cycle of war and vengeance. Take your rightful place in the galactic community." For a long, tense moment, the atrium was silent except for the faint moans of the wounded and the distant rumble of explosions. Human and Krythal alike stared at Xyloth, weapons half-lowered, as if caught in some strange spell. Then, slowly, ponderously, the Krythal leader lowered its cannon. "Perhaps," it clicked thoughtfully, "perhaps there is wisdom in your words, mammal. Perhaps it is time for change." Xyloth let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Behind him, he heard Riker do the same. It was over. They had won. Not through superior firepower or technological might, but through something far more powerful, the unifying force of an idea. The idea that all species, no matter how different, could find common ground. That swords could be beaten into plowshares, and that even the most implacable of foes could become the staunchest of allies. It was an idea that Xyloth knew would define his life's work going forward. And as he stood there amidst the wreckage of Babylon Station, surrounded by the weary smiles of his human comrades, he couldn't help but feel that that work was off to a very good start indeed. Because while humanity might not always understand the Concordance's methods, there was no denying that their ultimate goal was the same: peace, prosperity, and a better tomorrow for all. Even if they occasionally needed to be reminded that there was more than one way to get there.